Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me for today's edition of Arkansas Alive. I'm going to talk to you all week long. It might sound a little morbid. How to kill 11 million people. How do you do that? You lie to them. That's the title of this book by Andy Andrews. It's about the Holocaust and how Satan used Hitler to lie to the German people and the Jewish people to kill 11 million people. It's very interesting, and it's very imperative that we understand how Satan uses lies. Know the truth, and the knowledge of the truth will set you free. Stay tuned. Arkansas Alive starts right now. As I said in my opening remarks yesterday, I saw this little book several years ago, How to Kill 11 Million People. I was fascinated by the title, and I opened it up and it said, you lie to them. And that's how the Holocaust succeeded. Hitler lied to the Jews. He lied to everybody. He lied to the Germans. And we see this pattern continuing in the world today. Now, Jesus dealt with it in Matthew 24, and I always go back to Matthew 24 because when the disciples asked Jesus, what's going to be the signs of the end of the age? He said, first, take heed that no man deceive you. Then he tells them there'll be wars, rumors of wars, there'll be earthquakes, famines, so forth, plagues, pestilences. Take heed that no man deceive you. Now, to keep from being deceived, and deception, a lie is the opposite of the truth. To keep from being deceived into believing the wrong thing, you have to know the truth. John chapter 8, verse 44 says, the knowledge of the truth, verse 32, John 8:32 says, you shall know the truth, and the knowledge of the truth will make you free. But you know, everybody doesn't believe the truth. The truth is not taught from the pulpits of our churches anymore. They're teaching tolerance. They're teaching a fellowship. They're teaching all kinds of things, but they're not teaching the truth. So when Christians are deceived into believing the wrong thing, it's because they don't know the truth. And the knowledge of the truth is the only thing that will protect you from being deceived. I asked Dr. Lester Sumrall one time. We had gone to Israel with him. In fact, we went half a dozen times with him and had held world leadership conferences in Jerusalem. Well, we were on the Sea of Galilee in a hotel. We just finished lunch, and we were looking out over the Sea of Galilee, and Jeannie and I asked Brother Sumrall a question. We did not understand why a good friend of ours from Northern California, a pastor, had been deceived into believing the wrong thing. He actually had gotten a satellite dish. This was in the 80s where satellite teaching was being done from local churches, but you had to have a big dish in the backyard, and there were certain ministries that were sending out teaching over the satellite, and a church could get a satellite receiver and could receive the teaching. And he had done that, but he made the mistake of finding the Playboy channel on that satellite frequency, and he started watching the Playboy channel, and he got deceived into believing the wrong thing. He began to practice what he saw on the Playboy channel, the pornography and so forth, and he had an affair with a woman in the church. I think it was his secretary or one of the staff members. And he was discovered, and he was found out, and he lied about it, denied it, which is mostly the case. And his church removed him from the pulpit. His wife divorced him. He lost his family. Everything bad that could have happened to him because of his sin. And so we were asking Brother Sumrall, why didn't we see this? We were friends. He had preached in my church. I'd preached in his church. And Jeannie and I were very concerned because we did not pick up on this. We did not discern this. And we asked Brother Sumrall, why not? Why didn't we discern this? And Brother Summerall said this. Listen to this answer. He said, you probably did discern it in your spirit. You knew something wasn't right, but you didn't want to believe it because he was a friend and he was a pastor, and you didn't want to believe what you felt in your spirit. He said, you probably did discern something was not right, but you didn't want to believe it. And that's a lot of times why we don't act in the truth, is because when we see the lie or we hear the lie, we don't want to believe. You know, I just finished teaching a whole lesson on perfected love. And love, you know, you walk in love, you don't reveal a friend's sin or whatever. Love covers a multitude of sin. And so you want to do the right thing. You don't want to expose somebody. So we didn't want to think evil of this guy, so we didn't act on it. And Brother Summerall called our attention to that. He said, you probably did deceive it, but because he was a friend, because he was a pastor, you didn't believe it. Now, that's how Satan operates. How do you kill 11 million people? Andy Andrews, in his book with the same title, says you lie to them. And he did his research and he studied, and I'm using this as an example. The Holocaust, the systematic killing of 11 million people. Actually, Hitler wanted to kill 11 million people, but he didn't get that far because he couldn't figure out how to kill them and destroy their bodies fast enough. Same thing's going on today in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin, he's probably possessed by the same demon that possessed Hitler. And they are killing civilians. It's genocide. It's murder. Murder, rape, robbery. They're destroying the Ukrainian people. He's lying to the Russian people and telling them that it's Ukraine's fault. But that's a lie. But listen to what Hitler said about lying. And I read this to you yesterday. And how do you kill 11 million people? Or how a better rendering would be, how do you get 11 million people to allow themselves to be killed? Here it is. Hitler said to his inner circle, how fortunate for leaders, Hitler said, that men do not think. Make the lie big, keep it simple, and keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. Boy, how many rulers have we seen in the world? This book does not have all of the figures, but there have been millions of people killed. And here's some of the figures. Why 11 million people? There's no singular significance in that number. The people who were killed by Hitler between 1933 and 1945 only represents institutional killing. It does not include 5 million Germans and civilians and military war dead. Neither does it include the 28 million Europeans killed during World War II. Cambodians killed more than 3 million of their own people between 75 and 79. 3 million from a population of 8 million. We could have used the exact figure of 61 million. That's the number of people who were ordered by the government of the Soviet Union, shown by their own records between the years of 1917 and 1987. They ordered these people killed. Only 54 million of the men, women, and children put to death by the Communist Party were officially Soviet citizens. That's 14 million human lives for every word in this book, Andy Andrews says. Of course, during World War II and during World War II, we saw many more millions of people killed as a result of war. North Korea, Mexico, Pakistan, Baltic states, all of these people. Stalin, if you go back to Stalin, he killed 30 million of his own people. Mao Zedong killed 60 million of his own people. And listen to this. I know this hurts, but it's shocking. In America, we've killed 63 million babies. I mean, you got to let this sink in. 63 million babies have been systematically murdered in their mother's womb. And of course, the purveyors of abortion keep touting the same old rhetoric. It's a woman's right to choose. The woman's right to choose takes place at the moment she has sex with a man and gets impregnated by that man, whether it's a rape, an incest, her husband, casual sex, fornication, adultery. But that's her right to choose, is when she conceives that child. She chose to do that, except in rape and incest. So the right to choose is not the right to abort a living soul and to kill a baby. The right to choose is to refuse or reject the sexual relationship. Now, let's go on and answer this question. How do you kill 11 million people, or how you allow 11 million people to be killed? Let me get back to where we left off yesterday. Okay, the National Socialist Party. That was the German Workers' Party. That was Hitler's party, National Socialist Party. I'm shocked today that the Democrat Party has called themselves the Democrat Socialist Party. I would think they'd be afraid to label themselves that. But like Hitler said, men don't think. So it's easy to deceive and lie to people that don't think. You know, we should teach our children to think for themselves because there's going to come a time in their lives where they're going to have to make decisions on what they understand. Okay, according to the records, Hitler was actually dependent on his audience's ability to understand him. And I listen to this, it'll sound familiar to you. In agricultural areas, he pledged tax cuts for farmers, new laws to protect food prices. In working class neighborhoods, he talked about redistribution of wealth. My brother and sister, we're hearing the same thing today. Why? It's the same devil, same demon spirits. Redistribution of wealth and attacking the high profits generated by business owners. You probably have heard these phrasings about a change coming in America. And sometimes we hear them applied to spiritual things. Reset. It's time for reset. That actually is an economic reference to changing over from a capitalist society to a socialist society. So anytime you hear that term reset, he's not talking about spiritual things. He's talking about economic things, carnal things. That's really what's referring to. Now the big reset that's going to come, it's going to come economically. After the rapture of the church takes place, there's going to be a big reset because millions of people are going to be missing in action. They're going to be gone. There'll be a loss of income. Of course, the Antichrist will come in and try to soothe everything out. But the big reset is from before the rapture takes place, is going to be trying to get the country to change from capitalism to socialism. So just remember those terms. Hitler was very clear. He said, the masses of people don't think. They will more easily fall victim to a big lie rather than a small one. So he said, make the lie big and keep repeating it. So the more you tell it, the more you preach it, the more you teach it, and the bigger it is, the more people are going to accept it. Now, there were possibly five. That's not. That's a misstatement. Any country can survive having chosen a fool for their leader. But history has shown, time and time again, that a nation of fools is surely doomed. I think it was, what's his name, Tucker? I think he wrote a book called Ship of Fools a few years ago. And they have pictures and faces of all of the politicians and so forth. Do you remember Richard Nixon when he was discovered in Watergate? He lied to the American people, and he was disgraced, and he resigned. President Bill Clinton lied to a grand jury and was impeached. As you follow the political, historical background of our country, you will see that America is not much different than a lot of these other communist, socialist nations, because we have adopted a socialist, communist philosophy into our country. But, you know, they cover it up and they sell it with sugar coating on it. This is going to be good for you. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. But it's not done. So we've seen evidence of lying, hypocrisy, talking out of both sides of your mouth, read my lips, no new taxes. America is no longer a Christian nation. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. All those were lies. They were not true, but they were sold as truth. And repetition is teaching a truth. Teaching is repetition of a truth. And so if you want to get somebody to believe a lie, you keep saying it, you keep saying it, you keep teaching it, you keep teaching it. Jesus said the knowledge of the truth will make you free. It will make you liberated. And I've defined all these terms. I'm going to read them to you in a minute. But I want you to get some kind of comparison, a background for something that you can understand that this is nothing new. This has been around for a year. Now, here's an interesting statement. There are currently 545 human beings who are directly, legally, morally, and individually responsible for every problem America faces. You know who those people are? Your legislators. They're the legislators that we vote for and send to Washington to represent our states, our citizenry, and they go to Washington and they're responsible for everything that happens in this country. Have you ever in your life heard of a politician who was not for a balanced budget? Of course, they're all for a balanced budget. Have you ever seen a politician speak in favor of a complicated tax code that ordinary citizens would find it difficult to understand? Then why do we have a complicated tax code that ordinary citizens cannot understand? Meet the 545 men and women who enact every law, propose every budget, and set every policy enforced on the citizens of the United States of America. The President, 9 Supreme Court justices, 100 senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives. By the way, have you ever noticed that if any one of them lies to us, if any of us lie to them, it's a felony? But if any one of them lies to us, it's considered politics. We don't hold people accountable. We don't hold them accountable for their words. And we should. You would also think that Well, I'm not going to go into the rest of this. You can read the book for yourself. It's called How to Kill 11 Million People. You lie to them. And make it a big lie, not a small one. And keep telling it over and over. Some people call this brainwashing. It's called political expectation. It's managing expectations. If you want somebody to believe something, you keep telling them the same thing over and over and over again. Now, let's go to back to John chapter 8. And let's read beginning with verse 31. John 8:31. Then Jesus said to those Jews which believed on him, if you continue in my word, then you're my disciples indeed. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Now, the truth is the opposite of a lie. A lie is the opposite of truth. And if you don't know the truth, then you'll believe the lie. So it's important, pastors, that you teach the truth from the pulpit, no matter what anybody thinks about it. You say, well, I don't want to offend anybody. Well, if you don't want to offend anybody, then get out of the pulpit, get out of the ministry. Because Jesus offended people all the time by the words that he spoke. He even said, Master, these are hard words, but they were the truth. I'm not talking about becoming arrogant and belligerent and self-gratifying and rude and all that. I'm talking about telling the truth. He said, you'll know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Now listen to the dialogue between Jesus and his disciples. And they answered him and said, wow, we're Abraham's seed, and we're not in bondage to any man. How sayest thou, you shall be made free? He wasn't talking about slavery. He wasn't talking about that kind of bondage. He was talking about being ignorant of the truth. And Jesus answered them and said, whosoever committeth sin is the servant of sin. And the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son abides forever. If the Son therefore shall make you free, you shall be free indeed. I know that you are Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me, because my word has no place in you. I speak that which I have seen with my father, and you do that which you have seen with your father. They answered and said, Abraham is our father. Jesus said, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. But now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth, which I have heard of God. This did not Abraham. You do the deeds of your father. Then they said unto him, we are not born of fornication. We have one Father, even God. Jesus said, if God were your Father, you would do the works of your Father, and you would believe me, for I indeed proceed forth and came from God. Neither did I come of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech? Because you cannot hear my word. You are of your father, the devil. Whoa, wow, don't you know that stung? These are religious Jews, and Jesus said, your father is not Abraham, your father's the devil. You're of the devil. Wow. And the lusts of your father he will do. Lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth. Now that references, if you can find it, you can go over to Revelation and you can find where it says there was a war in heaven. Satan wanted to be God. He challenged God and he was cast out of heaven. Jesus said in Luke 10:19, he saw him fall from heaven. So he says he was a murderer from the beginning, abode not in the truth, because he speaks a lie. He speaks of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. Boy, I mean, he nailed him. He exposed the devil to the Jewish group that was with him. They probably thought, why are we following this man? He's insulting our Judaism. He's insulting everything about us. He said, you're of your father the devil, and he is a liar and the father of lies. So where does lying come from? It comes from Satan. It also is a part of your fallen nature, your Adamic nature, the fallen nature that you received from Adam. But when you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and you're born again, then you receive the nature of God. And you're no longer of the nature of Adam or the nature of the devil. You are a new creation. Old things passed away, all things become new. So don't get stuck in the past. Yes, you were of your father the devil, and yes, you have an Adamic nature that was passed on to you down the lineage of humanity. But once you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, once you get born again, you're no longer you no longer have the Adamic nature. You're no longer of your father the devil. You have God's righteous nature. You know, when the Apostle Paul was confronted, and I think I said this last week, when the Apostle Paul was confronted by those that were challenging him, because he was a blasphemer, he was a murderer, he was a scoundrel. And they said, whose authority? Look what you did. And he said, yes, but I did it ignorantly and in unbelief, and God forgave me. Praise God. When you get forgiven, when you get born again, you get redeemed, you're no longer under the authority of the devil. And Jesus went on to say, and we'll close with this today, and because I tell you the truth, you believe me not. Now, I've got a story I want to tell you tomorrow about how I experienced that very thing in the liquor business before I got saved. And I want to show you and demonstrate to you why we tend to believe the lie before we will believe the truth. But the knowledge of the truth is what makes you free from the lies. Join me tomorrow for Arkansas Live. Remember, Jesus is Lord over Arkansas, and wherever in the world you are watching too.
Send your questions, comments, and testimonies to Happy Caldwell at Post Office Box 26207, Little Rock, Arkansas 72221, or email happycaldwell@vtntv.com. Remember to follow VTN on Facebook at VTN Your Arkansas Christian Connection, and follow Happy Caldwell on Twitter at Happy_Caldwell. VTN is on Roku. Search VTN in the channel store and add us to your lineup. Today's episode is available to watch on demand at VTNTV.com and click Watch. You can also watch VTN via live stream at VTNTV.com.